The First Sudanese Civil War, 1955 to 1972, stands as one of the earliest and most consequential post-colonial conflicts in Africa. Emerging from the uneasy transition from imperial rule to independence, the war was not merely a struggle for political power but a deeper contest over identity, culture, religion, and the very nature of the Sudanese state. To understand its origins, progression, and consequences, one must examine the historical foundations laid during colonial rule. The roots of the conflict can be traced to the period of Anglo-Egyptian rule, known formally as the Anglo-Egyptian Condominium. Under this system, Sudan was governed jointly by Britain and Egypt, though British influence predominated. Colonial administrators adopted a policy that effectively divided the country into two distinct regions, the Arabiaized, Muslim North and the largely African, animist and Christian South. As decolonization swept across Africa in the mid-20th century, Sudan moved toward independence, achieved in 1956. However, the process was deeply flawed. Southern leaders, aware of their disadvantaged position, demanded a federal system that would grant them autonomy. Northern political elites, however, rejected these demands, favoring a centralized state dominated by Khartoum. As decolonization swept across Africa in the mid-20th century, Sudan moved toward independence, achieved in 1956. However, the process was deeply flawed. Southern leaders, aware of their disadvantaged position, demanded a federal system that would grant them autonomy. Northern political elites, however, rejected these demands, favoring a centralized state dominated by Khartoum. The term Nyanya, derived from a Madi word meaning snake venom, reflected both the guerrilla tactics employed by the rebels and their lethal resistance to northern control. The movement lacked centralized leadership in its early years, operating instead through loosely coordinated bands. Over time, however, it developed greater cohesion, particularly under leaders such as Joseph Lagu. At its core, the conflict was deeply rooted in questions of identity. The northern ruling class envisioned Sudan as an Arab and Islamic, while the south was ethnically diverse and religiously pluralistic. Efforts by the government to impose Arabic language and Islamic cultural norms were perceived in the south as a form of cultural imperialism. Christian missionaries had played a significant role in the south during the colonial period, and many southern elites identified with Christianity or indigenous beliefs. The imposition of Islamic law and Arab identity thus became a central grievance.